be a massive as quickly as it seems as the marijuana turn happened. Because
Hmm.
that happened, it felt like it happened overnight, all right, where
Hmm.
suddenly there's ballot measures in all of these states and it's happening, and it's not just Colorado and California, it's like everywhere. So I don't know if it'll happen that quickly, um, because I think it's less intellectually accessible to people. People understand marijuana, right?
Yeah.
There are so many different facets of these other plant medicines that, they're like, you could probably name 15 that do different things that I am a relatively educated person that I can't speak about at all.
Yeah, the tough part too is, especially for scientists who want to get repeatable results,
Oh yeah.
the experience, people tend to report it's different every time. Even if you take the same plant, they get a different experience every time. So I think the scientists have a tough time with that one as well.
Well, it's scary, first of all.
It's scary. And I think, we talk about it a lot on this podcast, all the healing and amazing benefits, but I think it's worth saying too that it's definitely not for everyone, you know.
Right.
Uh,
And so that's the problem with it not becoming mainstream, is that like aspirin is basically for everybody,
yeah.
right? Penicillin is basically for everybody. There are outliers with allergies and stuff like that, So, I was talking to my brother, who's a aficionado of weed, I guess you
Oh,
could
is
say.
he?
Oh yeah, decades in the business. Um, and I remember years ago he was saying, it's going to be legal. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. He goes, no, there's going to be some day where you walk into a liquor store, and instead of buying a pack of cigarettes, you buy a pack of marijuana cigarettes. And his attitude on that has changed since. When he talked to him today, I'm like, it's legal. How come that hasn't happened? He said, because there's no consistency in the product. Okay. Like you can go to a dispensary and the same whatever purple Skywalker that you bought last week is different this week, right?
Mhm.
The tobacco industry has consistency in what they grow, how they prepare it, how they toast it, how they shred it, and how the cigarette gets made. And there's no consistency in the marijuana product. So that's why.
Toasted tobacco.
Yeah.
And tobacco, man. Do people still smoke cigarettes?
They do. Where were we? Gosh, we were somewhere and everybody was smoking. We're in such like a health bubble here in Los Angeles, where there's everyone's doing yoga and fucking Pilates and Barry's boot camp and everyone doing and all that, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not breaking balls, but you hardly see anybody smoking. Like they stand
No.
out if they're smoking. But
Yeah.
we were, gosh, I don't know. We were somewhere in Arizona, Tucson or Phoenix or something, and everybody was smoking cigarettes. It was really strange.
Yeah, yeah. I used to work on a movie set back on the East Coast that
Mm.
was very smoky. There was like smoking, those posts where you put your butts away.
Oh
Those were
yeah.
like all over the place. And then we'd have LA people fly in to, some person that was from LA to come work on the movie. And they're like, what's going on here? Like, there's like cigarette smoke everywhere.
I'm old enough to have smoked on airplanes. Like I was old enough.
Wow.
Yeah, I was old enough to smoke. I was 18, and you can still get the smoking section on an airplane. I remember that. Man, and I remember a pre 9/11 world where, you could walk into an airport and walk your girlfriend right to her gate,
Mm.
and not go through fucking secure, like anything like that. It was crazy. And smoking inside and everything. I remember smoking inside in LA. Oh,
I
Vegas. No, 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 Reno. We were in Reno, so you're in casinos, and every degenerate in the fucking world is up till 6 in the morning smoking cigarettes, and it was disgusting walking
Yeah.
through a casino. I'd been in a casino in so long. That's what it was.
I'm old enough to I have smoked in a Pizza Hut.
Ah,
Um,
it's high
uh,
class, buddy.
I've smoked in an IHOP.
Mm. Waffle House. I think you have to smoke if you're in a Waffle House.
Yeah, I think that's required. Uh, um, and yeah, only other cigarette smoking story. I've long since quit, but I did smoke when I was younger. And
Mhm.
then I had an aunt who was a smoker, and she bought me cigarettes when I was a kid or teenager.
Mhm.
And she said, "Your mom wouldn't mind about this, right?" And I said, "No, no, of course not." And then I remember she was driving me, and I was in the backseat of the car. I was smoking in my aunt's car while she was driving, and she rolls up my fingers in the window. I'm like, "Hang on, hang on."
Ah,
So
Jesus. Well, I smoked with my friends when I was like 12 or 13 for like a summer. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And then
as all
stopped.
13-year-olds should.
Yeah, right. And then I stopped. And then I was doing a play when I was 18 years old. where the character had to smoke, and they had the fake cigarettes or the real ones. I'm just going to smoke real ones. And the director's like, careful, you're going to get hooked. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I got super hooked. And I smoked for the next 15 years, and then I quit. And
Whoa.
I quit almost 18 years now. I'm off cigarettes,
Wow.
which is great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was tough. I thought it was going to be really tough to quit, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
It gets harder though the more times you quit. If you quit and you start again, then it's harder every time you got to
Yeah.
start again. So if for everyone listening out there, if you quit, just stick
Just
with
stay
it.
quit. Stay quit. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
read a
feels
book.
good. You can be proud of that, and
Oh yeah.
enjoy that clarity you get from not being addicted to anything.
I read a book that made me quit called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking. Believe it or not.
I've heard of this. Is that what helped you quit?
It's the only reason that I quit. Alan Carr, Carr. I remember the kid gave me the book. I'm like, what the fuck is that? He goes, I'll give it to you, but just be ready. I'm like, what do you mean be ready? He said, you won't smoke anymore after you read this book. So make sure that you're ready to quit. And I went,
I've heard of
bullshit,
this. I've heard of this.
bullshit. 100% right. By the time you're like on page 10, you're like, oh, fuck. I'm not going to be a smoker by the time I'm done with this book. And it was, I
And
remember
in the
exactly
book,
where I was. Yep.
doesn't the author say in the beginning of the book like smoke them all you got, like smoke them if you got them,
He,
smoke all
he
throughout this
tells you
book?
there are certain points in the book where experimentally he says, all right, light a cigarette now and really focus on it and answer the following questions honestly. And so you do, right? And then you keep reading and you're like, oh wow, that makes so much sense. He's totally fucking right. And then blah, blah, blah. And then with like 4 or 5 pages to go, he tells you, he goes, all right, light up your last cigarette that you're ever going to have right now.
Whoa.
Smoke it. Remember all of the reasons why you're about to stop. And then on the last page of the book, he says, all right, turn the page and crush out the last cigarette of your life. And I remember
Wow.
exactly where I was sitting and when it happened. And you know that that's it. Like, you know it. Because he tells you if it's not, if you don't remember your last cigarette, then it wasn't your last cigarette. So remember this one like right now. And it was, yeah, that was, man, I didn't look back. There was a little bit of discomfort for a couple days, but I never looked back.
So I know that was a long time ago, but how did that feel, crushing out your last cigarette?
Liberating,
Yeah, it felt good.
because the hardest part about quitting was the anticipation of it and thinking how
Mm,
much you're going to miss it and thinking how much you love it and how great a cigarette is after you eat and like and all that. And the book just blows up all of those lies that you tell yourself about it, right?
yeah.
It's a lie that it's harder than quitting heroin. It's a complete fucking lie perpetrated by the tobacco industry to scare you into not even trying to quit. Yeah. So and I'll just give you one anecdote from the book. Uh they tell you, go out in the world and find a non-smoker and ask a non-smoker, when's the last time you held a pack of cigarettes in your hand? Like,
Yeah.
I'll ask you, when's the last time you held a pack of cigarettes in your hand, Jeff Apple?
I can't remember.
Can't remember. Years,
Yeah.
probably.
Probably years. Yeah.
Okay. So on the side of every box of cigarettes, there's that huge Surgeon General's warning, this is going to fucking kill you, right?
Yeah.
Cigarette smoking will kill. You go in Europe and there's a big skull and crossbones on the side. This will kill you, whatever. Okay. So since non-smokers, we've established, never have occasion to hold a pack of cigarettes in their hand, who's that warning for? The warning is for the smoker. What do smokers do when they're nervous?
They smoke.
They smoke. Okay. So that warning is just to increase business for the fucking tobacco industry. As much as they bitched and moaned about having the label put on it, they secretly love having the warning label on it.
Wow.
Just like rock and roll acts love having the warning parental advisory sticker on their records. It makes the people want it more. Okay. Seeing, oh my gosh, this is going to kill me makes a smoker nervous and they smoke more. So
Isn't it weird that people smoke when they're nervous? But if you really think about it, the effect of like the initial onset effect of taking in nicotine,
mhm,
it's kind of like anxiety. Like
it is.
you feel, I don't know, it's been a while since you probably smoked, but like the initial sort of effect you get from it is like a little bit of anxiousness. Is like,
Right. The calming effect that you get is when you're halfway through because you've been breathing deeply
yeah,
for this, and so that's one of the replacements for smoking is just go and take 5 deep breaths and get on with your fucking life, you know?
So, by the way, tobacco is like a crazy plant. I was reading about it more a couple years ago, and we got a lot of plant medicine people come on the podcast, so we're
Mm,
constantly talking about like the intelligence of the plants and these kind of things. But tobacco is crazy, man. I was reading about it, and it actually generates the nicotine um, because it's eaten. I believe it's a type of worm
mhm,
that eats the leaves of the tobacco plant,
mhm.
and so it generates the nicotine as a defense mechanism
Oh,
because it
wow.
gives the worms like seizures.
Ah, cool.
Um, but it gets crazier because if that doesn't work, sometimes the worms will just keep eating them anyways. If that doesn't work, the plant will actually generate a trichome, which is like a little molecule within the plant that
Mhm.
when the worm eats it, it actually makes the worm smell, and the smell attracts a bird that will, or sorry, a an insect that prefers to eat the worm. So the plant will actually make the worm stink in a way that it attracts
Wow.
an insect that will eat the worm. But then if that doesn't work, it has a way to switch its flowering cycle, so it will switch from nighttime to daytime as a means to defend itself as
Oh,
well
wow.
against its predators. So, little biology. I probably messed that up. If anyone's listening and they're a scientist, they're probably like, "Oh, he totally botched that." But it's fascinating. The little plant biologists in our world.
Nature's incredible, man.
Yeah, for
Nature's
sure.
incredible. Did I tell you that I didn't witness it, but we were educated on ravens, how smart ravens are, the bird.
Yeah.
And we were up in the Grand Canyon and we were at some tourist trap in the Grand Canyon renting bikes. And but they had a pet raven that was there because it got like hit by a car, like got winged by a car and was like recuperating and was like just hanging out in the bike shop, right? Like in fucking Shawshank Redemption, right? Like Red had that big, right, whatever. Okay. And so I'm asking about the Raven. And he goes, well, actually, this guy was the most successful, he called it street fishing, street fisherman. I'm like, what's a street fisherman? I got to ask you, say something like that. Like, I don't just know what it is. He goes, well, they understand. Ravens know what what squirrels like to eat, the kind of nuts that squirrels have to have. They're irresistible to squirrels. And they find them and they put them in the fucking road to lure the squirrels out in the road so they'll get hit by a car so the ravens can eat the bodies and not have to like,
Whoa.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a pretty cool Reddit thread called Nature is Metal, and
Mm,
it's all about how like fucking hardcore nature is, and it just shows like brutal pictures of like animals just like being nature, man, and like
nature being nature. It was fucking crazy. But I mean, for that evolution of survival to happen in the small brain of a raven, like, oh, this thing where big heavy things go really fast and squash smaller things. I want this squirrel to die. So I'm going to put this food here and hopefully it'll get run over by something terrible.
that is crazy, man.
Yeah.
I
Crazy.
when I did Awakened Underground, the psychedelic
Mm,
podcast that I produced for our friend Cody,
mm,
we a couple of guys who created we had like an intro disclaimer on that show. So the beginning of the show was like two guys talking about how like serious psychedelics are and like, don't fuck around kind of disclaimer.
yeah.
And the guys who did the disclaimer for us were two Native American men,
Mm,
and they had a crow living with them. And when we went to record the disclaimer, we went to their home, and they had this crow living in there. I think it had been injured near their home, and so they brought it in. And that crow was super smart, man. Like it would be in the other room, and if we talked about it, it would be like, "Wah." We'd be like, yeah, they'd be like, yeah, the crow can hear us. He knows we're talking about him, and he'd be like, "Rah, rah."
wow.
Yeah, crow
It's kind of,
nature,
yeah,
man.
nature.
It's
Nature will do it.
crazy.
So you want to get to this or what? We have some unfinished business.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, we have the hypothetical survival scenario. I've been doing less of those on the show.
Mhm.
Sometimes I do them, sometimes I don't do them. But for those who follow along at home, last time you were here, you brought one in for me.
You correct.
I was seeing if I could survive the podcast, and so now we're
Mhm.
gonna continue that.
Right. So where we were last time, um, I thought at the time, about a month away from dropping a new show. The new show hasn't dropped yet. There
Mhm.
was some disruption in my network availability or network kind of partnership. So I decided to hold back on the show until there's a better situation, which is upcoming. But anyway, the show's called The Ides of April. It is about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln following John Wilkes Booth. So last time I was here, Apple was about to release a show called Manhunt, covering the same topic, and not hating on Apple, but the show could have been better. We'll just say they took some creative liberties that just simply weren't necessary. And when it comes to this material, for whatever reason, people are afraid to stick just to the facts. And if you stick just to the facts, it's one of the most incredible true stories uh, in terms of early American political history, in terms of just brazen assassination, in terms of a flight from justice, in terms of capture, in terms of, you know, overreach of the federal government when it comes to citizens, military tribunals for non-military personnel, the first federal um, death penalty with regard to a woman ever. So just so much rich history there that just report the facts as they are, and people will be entertained, people will be educated, and people will go like, "There's no fucking way that that's true," and they'll go look it up and they'll go, "Holy shit, that's true." That's the journey I went on just as a researcher and as a historian, and I'm constantly amazed by it. So, uh, what I wanted to do for you last time I was on was see if you, as John Wilkes Booth, would have been able to just the first five questions that we did was to get you out of Washington City, which is
Yeah.
what they called Washington, D.C. back then. It wasn't D.C., it was Washington City. Just to get
No.
you having pulled the trigger, assassinating Lincoln, and get the fuck out of town. So, what last we left you, you had your broken leg,
Yep. Okay.
okay? And you were at Dr. Samuel Mudd's house in rural Delaware at like 3 in the morning on the night of the assassination. Okay. So now here we are. We need to get you across the Potomac River and into Virginia, where you believe there will be a reverse underground railroad of sorts, which will get you in deep into the heart of Dixie, where you'll be hidden and you'll be protected because you're the fucking conquering hero now. You killed Lincoln, the man who defeated your beloved Confederacy. Okay. You killed that motherfucker. And now you want your own people to take care of it. So you need to get across the Potomac. All right. So your leg is set. You're still, you and your companion, Davy Harold, your co conspirator, you're riding ahead of the news still. Okay. You're less than 24 hours since the assassination. Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Mudd gave you the name of someone who can help you. Okay.
Mhm.
A man named Samuel Cox, COX, who is a well known Confederate sympathizer in the area. He tells Union people to fuck off all the time. All right. But he'll help you. So you and Davy Harold, you get to Samuel Cox's house. He sees you. He goes, "Okay, listen, this is really bad. This is really bad. Okay. Everyone is going to be looking for you guys. There's one guy that can get you across the river. He's known as the River Ghost. Okay. You have to do exactly what he says or you're fucked. Okay. So you meet the River Ghost. Now, all you want, you're hungry, you're in pain, you're tired, you've been sleeping on the fucking ground. Now, you meet this River Ghost and he says, "All right, I can get you there, but you have to do what I say. You can't go tonight. If you want, you'll be on your own. If you want me to help you, you got to wait in the woods for 5 days till the heat dies down."
Damn.
Yeah. All right. So that's your first question. All right. Do you trust the River Ghost because he knows what he's doing? Or do you say, "Fuck it, it's too risky. We got to get the warm embrace of Virginia is right on the other side of the Potomac. We got to be able to get there." So what do you do?
So, you know, just thinking this one through, my initial reaction would be to say, fuck off, River Ghost. I'm getting out of here. However, I got to trust my team. And I believe that the people that I put in place to help me, I did that for a reason. The River Ghost possibly has more information than I have. So I'm going with follow his advice and lay low for the 5 days.
Okay, good. That's exactly what he did. And it's called his lost week. Okay.
Mm.
Booth and his companion were in this pine thicket in Delaware for almost a week. And a lot of shit happened during that week. It gave the Union the time to mobilize and to get a plan together instead of just go fucking get him. He's headed south. Go, 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 go. But they had no idea. The Union was still flying blind. Like they had no idea where they were. They knew it was John Wilkes Booth. They didn't know how many co-conspirators there were. They had caught 2 already. They thought there could be up to 5 more. They didn't know. But it was also during that time that John Wilkes Booth and Davy Harold, they were able to see some newspapers, and they realized that they're in trouble
Mm-hmm.
because the tide had shifted. The public sentiment was squarely against them. And from what he thought was going to happen with the Confederacy singing his praises, they instead adopted a posture of that wasn't us. We had nothing to do with it. We completely disavow John Wilkes Booth and what he did because they knew that all he had accomplished was martyring Abraham Lincoln. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, not only did we get our asses kicked in the war, but now their leader is a god because we had some fucking idiot go and kill him in the theater. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Booth is crushed. All right. Um, Public sentiment has shifted. He's not sure what he's going to find in Virginia, but he still needs to get across the Potomac. Okay. So the river ghost comes to him one night and said, all right, it's time. We've got a boat and you're on your own. Follow this heading and go. And he's like, well, shit, you have to come with us. We trust you. He goes, no, I can't do it. They're going to be looking for me. You guys have to oar yourself across this river. So if you're Booth, you're in a cast. Okay. You're in a cast. Davy Harold's like a little kid. He's not super strong. And you know how big across the Potomac is. Do you risk it in the middle of the night, moonless, inky black night? Okay. Do you risk it just with you and Davy Harold, or do you insist and wait for the river ghost to get you across the river?
You know, I'm going blackness of night. I'm going follow his advice.
Okay. So this is interesting because that is what they did.
Okay. But
And
I'm guessing it ended up fucking them.
they got lost. Okay.
Yeah, they did. Can't see shit out there. You
They
ain't got
got
no
lost
flashlights back then.
and landed back on the Delaware side,
Oh, they got all turned around.
completely turned around. But one more night of sleeping on the ground, the next evening they were able to get their bearings and they make it across. So
Okay.
ultimately they make it across. No real harm done in that mistake.
So I got it right though.
You got it right.
Yeah.
You got it right. They did not need the chaperone or the guide of the river ghost to get across the river.
And not to mention, I was told to do what he says because he's the expert and he says go without me. So let's do it.
He's the expert. So now here we are. Now you're in Virginia. Okay.
Okay.
But you also have the knowledge that you're fucking kryptonite. Okay. No one can come near you for fear of, the clenched fist of the Union Army just fucking killing you if you aid and abet the murder of Abraham Lincoln. Okay. So you get to a ferry crossing because there's the Rappahannock River in Virginia that you also have to get across. All right. But it's
Okay.
much smaller and there's ferry crossings all over the place. And it's one of those ferries with like the rope and the old dude fucking pulls the rope and you go across. All right. They need to get across. But people are asking questions and they need some cover. And so they look over and they see 3 Confederate soldiers, 3 18-year-old Confederate soldiers still in uniform making their way home because Lincoln pardoned everybody. Everybody just gets to go home. Okay. So
Even the bad guys.
everybody,
Hmm.
everybody, he said, we're all Americans again. We were
Nice.
never not all Americans. Release all prisoners of war, no charges against everybody as long as they put their guns down and just go home and do what they were doing before the war happened.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. One of the most generous
Yeah, that's big.
post-war,
That-
things anyone's ever did, ever.
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
It's
no,
time to
no one
heat.
does that. No one
No
does
one
that.
does that. They want to punish. They want to exact revenge. They want their pound of flesh.
They want
No,
to make an example.
Lincoln's like we're all Americans. Reconstruction starts today. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So these three
So we
dudes,
got these three guys.
we got these three guys, and Booth and Davy, they're going like, well, fuck, what do we do? How do we get them to help us? And the question comes down to do they spill the beans and say, we are the assassinators of the president, we need your help, and take that risk? Or do they try and pretend that they're someone that they're not, and hopefully that these three guys will help them?
Okay, so I can tell you what I would do, and something in my mind tells me they did not that. Something tells me they did not what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would do is leave those three guys alone. I don't know who I can trust.
Mm.
I'm gonna I'm gonna get across the river on my own and probably try to blend into the crowd in some way. But I don't necessarily feel comfortable asking them for help because I am aware that my own side is not happy with what I've done. So I think I'm going to go it alone.
Okay, so here's really, excuse me. So this is super interesting, and I'll get back to it. I'll get back to why. You'll figure out why in a little while. It's not what they did,
Okay.
but you're right, and you'll figure out why in a second. So what they decided to do was roll the dice and take their chances. They go up to these three kids, 18 years old, and they spill the beans. And these guys basically fall on their knees in deference to John Wilkes Booth. They
Mm.
love him. They worship him. They're like, you're the fucking best guy in the history of the world. Thank you so much for killing that motherfucker. There's still hope. Like everything Booth wanted to hear. He needed to be worshipped. He had an
Yeah.
audience finally.
So
He's an actor.
I was gonna say, like in my mind, I'm like, it's even more intensified given that he's an actor. It's
Yes,
like he just wants to be loved.
he needs
He's
an
like,
audience.
I will do anything for the audience to love me. I will kill someone.
Absolutely. Right. So now they have these guides. They have these three kids that get them across the river, and these three kids know everybody. They're like, all right, yo, we know two soldiers who are about a couple days ahead of us that were heading home, and they're right on this road going to the town of Bowling Green, where these three kids were headed. They were headed to Bowling Green, but on the way, there are these two soldiers. The last name is Garrett. Okay. And we know them, and we'll come up with enough of a cover for you. You're not going to be there as the assassinators of the president because they're a conservative family. They're good people. They won't let you in. But if we say that you're Confederate soldiers, okay, please put them up, and we'll say that you got that's a shrapnel wound to your leg, and all, and we'll give you everything you need to know. Great. So they do that. They go to the Garrett farmhouse. The ruse works. Okay. Booth and Davy Harold are welcomed into this farmhouse. They're given a great room, and here's dinner and everything. Davy Harold chooses to go with the three soldiers about an hour's ride further into Bowling Green because they're going to meet girls, and Davy needs to get his boots fixed and whatever. And he's like a 20-year-old kid. So, um, so Booth is left alone. Hold on. Okay. So Booth is left alone for the night at the Garrett farmhouse. Has no worries at all. Everything is terrific. Sleeps, eats great, meets the whole family. Everyone's talking. There was even a conversation about the assassinator of the president at the dinner table while Booth was sitting there, and he got to act. He got to be an actor. He got to act as if and asking questions. Well, what do you think of the guy? What do you think he did? What he did was right. Well, what about this? And what about that? And just loving it. He was loving it.
Yeah.
Now, the next morning, this is where shit gets kind of dicey.
Okay.
Booth is awoken by the dogs going fucking crazy and the sound of horses, sound of a horse charging down the road.
That's not good.
Here's the choice. He thinks this is it. Surge of adrenaline comes up. Does he trust his ruse and that this nice, conservative, good family will vouch for him? Or does he grab his gun belt and go out there and get ready to fight whoever's coming to get him? What do you do?
Wow. That's a tough one. I think I would probably go with like a C option.
What's the C option?
The C option would be like maybe this is a dumber idea that I my C option was going to be like hiding because if you go and you fight, I think it's over for sure. One man with a broken leg is not going to take down whoever's coming on these horses. But I also don't feel confident that the ruse is going to work. You know, whoever's coming to look for him knows who they're looking for. They know they're looking for a guy with a broken leg. And
Mhm. Remember, there were a lot of war wounded, and Booth had changed his appearance. Okay.
I
So
think I think what I would do is I would, especially as an actor, is I would stick with the ruse.
stick with the ruse. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Booth shit his pants. Okay. And he's
He
like,
went
I'm
he
gonna fucking die.
he went
And
out blasting.
he screamed to the family, get my pistols, get my pistols. So they're like, who the fuck is this guy? Okay. And he goes out there with a crutch and with his gun, and it's his friend coming back. It's
Oh.
Davy Harold and another one of the boys. Okay. And Davy's like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? It's me. He goes, I didn't know who the hell it was. I thought the cavalry was coming to fucking get me. But what that did was that alerted the family that something's fucking rotten in Denmark. Okay. Like these guys aren't who they say.
He blew
So
his
they
cover.
blew his cover. So they tried to kick him out. They refused to leave. And they reached a compromise where, okay, you guys can sleep in the tobacco barn.
Oh,
You can't
nice.
stay in the house. You've got
Right.
to sleep in the barn. So,
Smells nice in there, I'm sure.
yeah. Now, you have guns. They don't have guns. They're a nice family. Okay. Do you accept the deal? Do you demand to sleep in the house, or do you not fucking rock the boat and say, all right, at least we'll be inside and we'll sleep in the tobacco barn?
You know, what was the original reason for staying? I need to lay low there for a few days.
They needed to recuperate and to make
Yeah.
sure they wanted to get a lay of the land because they were trying to get to the Orange Line, the train line south to like Texas, so they could eventually be in fucking Mexico in a week. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was severely wounded. Okay. His wound wasn't getting better, and he needed just to fucking rest and sleep in
Yeah.
a bed. They was in the woods for 5 days and then lost on the river for a night. And so he was used to a certain level of living as an aristocrat almost. Okay.
Yeah.
That he just couldn't hack it. He couldn't hack life on the run. And so they wanted to recuperate, wanted to get some food. Davey needed to get his boots fixed, right? They wanted some Southern hospitality. Yeah.
So my options are demand to stay in the house,
At
basically at
gunpoint.
gunpoint,
Yeah.
or stay in
Not
the tobacco
not
barn.
rock the boat, accept the hospitality
That's a
and sleep
tough
in the
one.
tobacco. Mm.
What year did the telephone get invented? Is there telephones back then?
1888. No, 20 years before the telephone.
Okay, so they're
But
not called
the telegraph was around, and they were no longer ahead of the news.
because I don't
Everybody
want to
knew
be out. I don't want to be out in that tobacco barn and they're out in there Morse coding for the cops. You
there
know,
weren't telegraphs in every house. No, no, there were not. No, not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
All right. So tobacco barn or demand the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one, man. What I would personally do, again, I feel like what I would personally do probably different than what he did do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to say what I would do is not rock the boat and go tobacco barn.
Okay.
I
That's a
I could
that's
I could
that's what
see
they
it.
did.
Okay,
That's
all
what
right.
they
So I
did.
got it right. We'll go with
And
that.
here's what's great about these questions. And I'm not jacking myself off. I'm just saying what's interesting about the questions is that right answers are also wrong answers, and you'll see why in a second. Okay.
Yeah, like if sometimes I could choose what he chose, but then that ends up getting me killed. Pretty
Correct.
sure he dies in the end of this one. Spoiler alert.
So what happened was is that earlier that day, right around the time that Davy Harold was showing back up and scaring Booth, drawing his pistols, which led them to have to stay in the barn. Right around that time, at the ferry crossing over the Rappahannock, Union troops had arrived, and the three Confederate soldiers were recognized. And they said, hey, you know what? We saw a guy on a crutch traveling with a younger companion with these three dudes who we knew were on the way to Bowling Green because his dad owns a hotel in Bowling Green. That's probably where they went. Union troops are like, fuck it, we got him. We got him.
Bowling Green, baby.
So the whole Union, the 13th Cavalry, rides right past the Garrett farmhouse on the way to Bowling Green. They get there, they find the three dudes, And one of them, his name's Willie Jett, gives him up.
He narked. He got
Lieutenant
scared.
Doherty puts a gun in his mouth and said, "Tell us where they are. We're going to blow your fucking brains out."
Oh,
And they
that's how they
go,
did it back then.
"Oh yeah." They go, or they're at the Garrett farmhouse.
Who'd
They
you
go
say,
for
Lieutenant Doherty?
Doherty. Yeah, Lieutenant Doherty. Yeah,
Doherty put the gun in his mouth
right
and
in his
said,
mouth. Yeah, he goes, I'm tired of this shit because there
uh,
was a huge reward.
"Imagine, imagine you are in that position and you actually don't know where they are. And you got
Right?
the gun in your mouth and you're like, no, dude, I really don't know."
Holy fuck!
Here,
Yeah,
here's
it's
a
crazy.
here's a quick A or B for you.
Yeah,
Let's say you got the gun in your mouth,
yeah.
you legitimately don't know where they are. Do you make some shit up or do you double down on like, I swear I don't know where they are?
That's the problem with torture. You can't ever believe what someone tells you.
They could just
That
be
right there has led to the Geneva Conventions against torture because people will say anything to
get out of it,
just
make
to
it
stay
end.
to save their lives. Exactly right. Um, I would probably make something up
Yeah.
just to save to buy myself some time,
Yeah.
But
And then in the
uh,
meantime, you try to escape. They go off to
exactly.
the fake location and you're trying to
And
get the fuck out of
I
there
try and peel off somewhere, right? But they take him. They take Willie Jett
to the farmhouse.
to the farmhouse. So now it's the middle of the night. Okay. Booth and Harold are asleep in the tobacco barn.
Uh huh.
The Garrett brothers knew that something was wrong with them, something was up. So not only did they make them sleep in the tobacco barn, they locked it from the outside.
Well, they locked him in there.
They locked them in because
Oh,
they thought they
shit.
were horse thieves. They knew that they couldn't be trusted. They didn't think that they were the assassinators of Lincoln. But they knew they were bad dudes. So the cavalry shows up. They announce themselves. The barn is surrounded. Okay. Booth and Harold are fucked and refucked, and they know it. Okay. But they won't come out. First, they're denying that. I don't know who you are. Why are you doing that? Why are you treating us so poorly? Okay. And they're like, come out. We're setting the barn on fire. Like, we're
Oh
not coming out.
man, I thought we were gonna get the midsummer ending.
So they set the barn on fire.
Did they get burned alive?
Hold on. They set the
Oh
barn on fire. It's a tobacco barn. It's a fucking tinderbox.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So your companion, Davy Harold, begs you, I don't want to fucking burn alive. Let me out of here. Please let me out of here. So Booth's like, you coward, but fine. He goes, this boy is coming out, and I swear he knows nothing. He has nothing to do with anything that's happened. Like, okay, whatever, fine. So Harold comes out, and they ask him, is that Booth? He goes, I don't know who it is. I don't know who it is. He denies knowing who he is, but he knows. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they say, throw the guns out. He goes, I have all of the guns and I'm not throwing them out. I aim to use them on you, gentlemen. Booth actually proposes that if they line up, there's 50 of them. If they line up, he will fight them one by one.
Well, in duel style, like with a gun.
Yes, he makes that offer.
Oh, I love
Okay.
it. This guy is a true dramatist.
Right. So here's the question for you. Knowing what you know, knowing that they know what they know, that you're the guy, do you surrender and face justice, or do you go out in a blaze of glory?
Blaze of Glory, 100% Blaze of Glory. Court is going to be really, really boring. Let's just get this. Let's just skip all that.
So, trick question.
Plus, they could hang me. Think I'd rather
They were
die.
hanged. Yeah.
I
So
think I'd rather die by a bullet to the face than a hanging.
trick question. He didn't get a chance to do either
Oh,
because some horny cavalry officer outside of his orders shot him in the
flipped him.
back, clipped him through a hole in the barn.
Someone
Yeah.
got too excited and just
Yep.
like, I'm pulling the trigger now.
And
Fuck
wanted
this.
the notoriety, wanted to be the guy who killed John Wilkes Booth and shot him. Uh, where Lincoln was killed, the bullet was right below and behind his left ear, and it
Okay.
went up into his brain, across both halves of his brain, and lodged behind his right eye. Okay,
Damn.
where Booth was killed was about an inch below that. The
Whoa.
bullet was on a different plane and severed his spinal cord and rendered him paralyzed
Do
immediately,
you
but he
think
survived.
do you think the bullets and guns were so shitty back then that even if you get shot in the head, you don't die instantaneously and you just feel something like burrowing through your brain for a couple seconds before the whole thing turns off?
You know what? That's a good question. I'm not sure. The gun that killed Booth was small. Was a handheld single shot Derringer with a massive caliber ball in it. But it just wasn't that powerful. The
Yeah.
gun that killed Booth was more. The weapons back then were less accurate, but as destructive,
Oh, they
because
were.
the big lead balls would just
They're going
explode.
like they're going like cannonball style. They're thinking like
100%.
I got my mini cannon here.
Right. Like I could shoot you in the arm with a projectile from like a Glock 19, and there'll be tissue damage and muscle damage and might break the bone. But if you're shot with a musket from the Civil War era, that's why everyone was getting amputated, because it would just do so much fucking damage, because the lead ball would
Oh man,
mushroom when it
it
hit
just
anything.
explodes everything
Just
and
yeah,
just
exactly, and just destroyed fucking everything around it. Right. So no, so Booth was shot through the neck. He was paralyzed. Excuse me, he survived until dawn, a few hours, and then died on the porch of the Garrett farmhouse,
oh
um,
man.
as the sun was rising. Yeah, and then that started this great mini gold rush of all of the people who were there to try and collect their portion of the reward money, which was substantial back then. Yeah, um, and then Davy Harold and the other co-conspirators were, geez, tried in a military tribunal, convicted, hanged
Ooh,
unceremoniously.
who
Absolutely
was Davy
all.
Harold was how old?
Davy Harold was, gosh, maybe 22 or 23.
What about the three guys who helped them? Were they hanged?
No, they were not. They were
Okay.
charged with aiding and abetting, but then that was reduced because they then cooperated. But Samuel Mudd was sent to the Dry Tortugas federal prison just for setting the leg, which was fucking crazy, right? I know.
That's fucked up because I think with the Hippocratic
You
oath,
have to. You have
you
to set the
have
leg.
to.
You have to set the leg. But where he fucked up, because he was no friend of the Union, no friend of Lincoln, no friend of the black man. Okay. So when the Union troops came to his house, he said, "Oh, yeah, he was here, but he went that way," when actually they went the other way. So he was charged with aiding and abetting.
Yeah.
Um, but
There
the
was a
other two,
woman you said, first woman to get federally charged or something.
yeah, Mary Surratt.
What did
Mary
she do?
Surratt. Who really knows, right? She owned the boarding house where all the planning took place, and Booth asked her the morning of the assassination to ride out to this tavern on the outskirts of town and basically get his go bag ready with food and with binoculars and with weapons, and she did. So that was considered.
And toxic masculinity strikes again, man. She
Yeah,
got sucked into that bullshit.
got sucked into it. And Harold was hanged, and the other two conspirators from that night, uh, Lewis Powell, depending what name he uses, and George Atzerodt. Powell was the one who attacked Secretary Seward, and Atzerodt was supposed to assassinate the vice president, but never even tried. And they were all.
Were they hanged in public?
It was not a public hanging. It was in a yeah. It was in the penitentiary.
I
Excuse
am
me.
I am
Yeah.
impressed that you know that detail. I thought for sure you were gonna go, ah, fuck, I don't know, man.
No. It was not a public. They rushed all of this so much. It was all under the auspices of the suspension of the habeas corpus, which basically habeas corpus means show me the body, right? Which means habeas corpus means you can't indefinitely hold someone, right? They have
Mm.
to see a judge and have an indictment or have a hearing or whatever. And Lincoln suspended that, which means that he could hold prisoners of war indefinitely with and not have to expose them to the justice system, right?
Whoa.
Because at the time, the enemy was so kind of nebulous because we all looked the same. We're all Americans. You couldn't tell. You
Mm.
put a different fucking color jacket on, and you could walk through a Union camp,
Yeah.
right? It was a really dangerous time. But so all of those kind of suspensions were still in place for military combatants, and these civilians were considered military combatants and were treated really poorly. It was kind of a sham trial. It was pushed through, and they fucking killed them all.
Did you know that if you were to get arrested but then be acquitted, meaning
Mm.
found not guilty of what you were arrested for, typically the court will require you to sign something in order for your verdict of not guilty of the acquittal to be like for it to go through.
Mhm.
You have to sign something that says, I accept this verdict, but I also agree basically to not sue the cops for kidnapping me.
Right, because it's a kidnapping. You're fucking
because
kidding.
because if you're acquitted and you're found not guilty, but you were detained, you've now been detained for no reason. So,
Yep.
but
You're
you
getting
have to
kidnapped.
sign something that says, I accept that I've been acquitted, but I'm also not going to turn around and sue you and claim that you kidnapped me.
And what if you don't sign it? You're still acquitted. The judgment still stands.
Yeah, I don't know how it works, to be
Wow.
honest.
That would be that would be extortion. You were acquitted by a jury of your peers, but you can't fucking leave until you agree to not sue us.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. But these prisoners were held on a because it was such a cauldron of hatred against these conspirators that they were afraid that vigilante justice was going to come and get them, and they were going to get torn apart in the town square. So there are these ironclads, these ships, right, that look like kind of manta rays, right, these old ships that were at anchor in the bay, and they were converted into prisons. They were held as prisoners on these ships. And one guy, Davy Harold, was trying to kill himself by banging his head against the wall of his cell. So they put a padded hood over him for weeks, and
Whoa.
he was in handcuffs and chained to a fucking wall. And then they did that to everybody. Everybody was wearing hoods, and it was really
Could
harsh.
you could you imagine trying to end your own life via blunt force trauma?
Repeated blunt force trauma to the head. Yeah, that's what he was trying to fucking do. I know, man. It was really
Hey, you know what you should do if you ever have time to come up with a new podcast idea? Because I know you're into history and you're really
yeah.
good with all that research. It would be fucking cool. There's probably been a podcast on this already, but to talk about one of the Alcatraz escapes.
Mm. Yeah, there's been a bunch on that, but that's super. Yeah.
That would be cool. And speaking of podcasts, I don't talk about politics on the show much, but I can't believe, man, 4 years ago, and I only remember because 4 years ago it was actually election time, and now we're coming to election time again. Me and you were at our friend Michael
At
Blackson's house.
Blackson's on election
Uh,
night. I remember that.
we were creating his podcast full of OnlyFans girls and all
Booty
sorts of
dancers.
wildness and a lot of booty dancing.
Remember
And
that one booty dancer who would always wear like a Spider-Man costume? It was so
I
weird.
like I like when they have outfits, thematically. That's a lot of fun for me, and that's how you separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah. It was such a strange aspect of my job that at the end of these if Michael got particularly randy during the course of an episode at the end when the DJ he always had a DJ
Yeah,
for
yeah,
podcast recording night in his penthouse. The DJ would start pumping and the girls would start dancing, and Michael would bring out a stack of ones and start making it rain and throw money at the girls. Okay.
yep,
And then after everything was done, the girls didn't get the money. He would tell me to go collect all the money and put it back in his bedroom.
yeah. I remember that. I remember that.
So I'm on my hands and knees picking up all these singles. And
I don't know how our friend Michael Blackson figured that out because usually they want the money
they usually
afterwards,
want the money.
and
Yeah, but it was all
he
for
seems
show.
to have something figured out that I do not.
It was all for show. Yeah, it was all for show. But so to put a bow on this, um, the decision that you made to trust the Confederates, although it was no, you didn't. You chose to not trust those three.
See,
And
I would have.
that's what Booth and Davy should have done, because that proved to be their undoing. Because it was those three guys that led them to the Garrett farmhouse, that led them to being locked in the tobacco barn. And it was Willie Jett, one of those three, that eventually betrayed him and gave him up. So if they had just stuck to their own kind of wits to get across the Rappahannock and to get deeper into Virginia, it might have been very different.
the See, then the question becomes, if you don't have those three, those are the three that took you to your farmhouse shelter. So
Yep.
if you don't use them, do you end up finding shelter? I'm sure you do, but yeah, I've watched enough movies to know, like, even if it's your best friend, you don't tell him what you did, because then he's has the information.
Yep.
If
Agreed.
the cops come to him, you want, out of kindness, actually, you want him to say, I know nothing.
Yep.
You want no one to know anything, and the less
Plausible
witnesses.
deniability. That's why the president doesn't know about aliens,
I was
according to the movie Independence Day from 30 years ago. Yeah.
I was watching Fargo the other night,
The TV show or the
and
movie?
the movie.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you remember the scene where they get pulled over and the guy kills the cop. who's pulled them over,
And
and
then
then
the
the guy,
other,
and then the guy's moving the body, and then a car comes, and there's
yep,
witnesses, and the other guy fucking whips his car around and
goes
chases
and
those
gets him.
witnesses down. So
Yep.
that's where I'm at. I'm at like a no witnesses kind
No
of
one
level.
knows, then no one can rat you out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but they
So
took the risk just because they were uncomfortable and they wanted a hot
I,
meal and a warm bed.
I was gonna say there he's used to being pampered,
Yep.
and he should have used his acting skills. He should have gone method and just gone full Daniel Day Lewis and been
Yeah,
like,
and lived in the
I'm roughing
woods.
it. I'm roughing it. I'm gonna be a blacksmith for the next 10 years. Like
That's it.
I don't need an assistant to bring me a coffee. I can sleep on a rock,
Yep. That's how
It's
it
either
that's how
that
it
or
should.
you end up getting paralyzed for a night and then dying in the morning.
Yep.
So yeah, man.
Gosh.
Appreciate
Well,
you
listen.
coming on.
Yeah. So if anybody is interested in the Ides of April, it will eventually be dropped into the Devil Within feed. So if you just want to go and subscribe to the Devil within a month or so, you'll have information about the Ides of April. So that's just going to be my main feed for a while, where whatever shows I do are going to be introduced on that feed. So
Love it.
the
Cool,
Devil
man.
Within,
Well,
wherever you get your podcasts.
Devil Within, wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
And thanks for coming on, my friend.
You got it, brother. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Bye, everyone.